All right, all right, all right, all right. Apologies that I am moving a little slower today. I am on Mexican time. How about that? It- 10 o'clock was coming a little fast, so I needed a few minutes. So thank y'all. Good afternoon, afternoon, good afternoon. Happy Sunday, WLJ. Happy Sunday, Pat. Good afternoon. Glad you all are here. All right, I'm going to give it just a couple of minutes to see if we have some more folks join. They might be running late like me. And then we will get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. All right. Glad you all are here. Hey there. Vera Diane, I believe that is how you pronounce it. Happy Sunday. Welcome. Glad you are here. All right. All right. I'm going to do my intro. We'll get started as I introduce myself. Good morning. Good afternoon, Sadiq. Audra. Happy Sunday. Happy to have you here. So, as I introduce myself, my name is Jewel Pearson, and I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey. And you'll be able to find links to schedule with me once this video goes live down in the video description. And as I'm doing all of that, I serve up a lot of representation along the way. I want us to see ourselves. I want us to be in the movement. I want us to be successful in the movement and all of the things. So that is what I do. And if you find this video and the information helpful, I hope you will like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is live. Greetings from Fort Lauderdale. Good afternoon. Good morning, Bridget. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. Greetings from Raleigh. All right, we got North Carolina in the house. Welcome, welcome. I see some new names. I appreciate you all being here. Um, and yeah, so actually this morning, this afternoon, so I'm in San Miguel, Mexico, so it is still morning here, which is how I ended up running late because I was not paying attention to the time appropriately. But happy Sunday. You all can, I'm losing my voice. Um, I am having a wonderful time here, connecting, reconnecting with myself. I also changed Airbnb, so you can see I have a better view back behind me than the initial one I was in that I mean, it was pretty, but I still could only see some bushes and some trees, so I'm happy to have a better view and be in a better spot. Um, Danville, Virginia. Okay, welcome, welcome. Hey, Vaughn, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Welcome, everyone. Happy Sundays to you, Cynthia. Glad you all are here. All right, so today we are going to do some answering of some tiny house questions, and I actually am prepared. So I have a presentation. This morning, I want to talk about tiny house financing, which is one of the major questions in the tiny house movement. How do I finance my house? It is one of the challenging things within the movement. So we're going to talk about that. Happy Sunday, Rosalind. And we're also going to talk about placement of a tiny house. And so that is probably the number one question is where you can put a tiny house. Um, Thank you, Bridget. That is so sweet. Thank you so much. Bridget got it kicked off with a $20 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, so we're going to talk about placement of a tiny house, which is, again, Probably the number one question in the movement. I've talked about it 3 times already in the on my channel. So once this goes live, I'll link to the other 3 videos because I'm not going to go into it in depth, as in depth as I've done on some of those videos. But we're going to talk about it, and we're also going to talk about what I have as the answer to where can I place my tiny house. And so, hi Teresa. Carlisa. So we're going to do all the things, have some conversation, do all the things, and I am going to kick it off. So we'll talk about financing first. And unfortunately, tiny houses aren't as easy, and I'm using quote fingers when I say as easy, to finance as conventional housing. I feel like the main reason that it isn't is because they're on wheels, and so that presents a challenge for the lender, because kind of just like with the car, you know, if something were to go wrong with the loan, then how do they get their collateral back? What do they even do with their collateral? So I believe that is one of the challenges of it. And then also maybe the price point. I don't know if the price point is conducive for conventional financing. So that might be another one of the challenges. And so I'm going to share a screen because I'm prepared today. I actually have a presentation. All right, so we are talking about tiny house financing first. And so one of the questions that is always asked, how do I finance my tiny house? And as I'm talking through this, I'm talking about tiny houses on wheels, because a tiny house on foundation, like an ADU, or which is ADU, and we've spoken about ADUs frequently here. Those are the smallest structures in the back of a main house. So an ADU on foundation, or a tiny house on foundation in cities, counties that don't have a minimum square footage requirement, you can build a tiny house on foundation. Both of those you would do conventional financing. You would finance that just like you do a traditional house. And so what we're talking about today is specifically tiny houses on wheels, stick-built tiny houses on wheels, houses like my house. And when I say stick-built, I'm clarifying between RVs, travel trailers, schoolies. I am specifically talking about a tiny house, a stick-built tiny house on wheels. So I want to clarify that. So for financing for those structures, so one of the main ways that people go through financing is through personal savings. This was a big piece of how I financed my tiny house build. I did a combination of several of the things here, but personal savings. And so, as I've shared and I also did a financing video previously that I'll link here too, because there may be some information there that I don't share today. But for personal financing, so when I knew I wanted to build a tiny house, I established a separate savings account. Most bank accounts, you can actually name the savings account. So mine was Tiny House Build. So that way, as I was looking into my finances, it helped me stay on track, helped me stay focused on what I was trying to do. As I was spending money and I saw my tiny house build savings account, it would keep me on point in not frivolously spending money. And so, yeah, so personal savings. Also within personal savings, and I've shared this before, as I started running out of money, I also did, I got some personal loans from friends. So friends loaned me money. So that was part of my personal savings, because we're going to talk about personal loans in just a few minutes. But personal savings and saving as much money as you can for your tiny house build. The second way to finance it is sponsorships. I also have a video on sponsorships, how to obtain sponsorships. And so I also had sponsorships for my tiny house build. My house was on HGTV. It's been on HGTV 3 times, so let me put that out there. But the first time that it was on HGTV, so HGTV did not allow you to have sponsors because obviously they're the big brand name and they're going to have their own sponsors. But I kind of worked some deals on my own in the background where I was able to secure some sponsorships because my house was going to be on HGTV. I also had built my following. I had started building a following on Instagram, Facebook. At that time, I also had a blog. And so for sponsors, they're going to want to know what's in it for them, the with them, what can they get out of it. So building a brand, building your following is going to be important so that you can show the sponsor that you have an audience. And so sponsorships is going to be a way to secure financing. Um, Offering blog posts, offering posts to your following. TikTok, I'm not on TikTok, but I know that's a big opportunity for brand awareness. All of the things, and it is obviously, so in 2015, when I was building my house, there are way more options now for you to things that you can offer to sponsors where you would be sharing their information. And so I had whole proposals for sponsors, the number of posts that the number and types of posts that I was offering, where the locations and all of those things. And so you want to be sure that you're showing the the sponsors what they can get out of it. Another way to think about sponsorships is that so if you have a niche market for your tiny house. So I consulted years ago with someone who was building their tiny house, and they were doing aquaponics. It's one of those words. Um, so my and this was a black man, and so my suggestion for him was in considering sponsors, he had a whole niche market, a black man doing something different. Aquaponics isn't something that is widely discussed. So seeking sponsors within that area specifically to sponsor his build. Also, they'll oftentimes provide products. Outside of financing, outside of money, they might provide products. So, for example, in my tiny house build, I worked with a company out of Georgia that built staircases, and they didn't provide money, but they built my staircases, which was a whole lot of money. They built my staircase. And so considering sponsorships is a big way to finance your house and something to consider. Also, bartering. So if you have something that you're good at, something that you can offer to sponsors, to people, to builders, use that as collateral to offer that um, to some sponsors, to the builder. I do such and such. I have this brand awareness. I have all of these things, and I'm willing to maybe help you build your website, grow your following, help. Maybe they need some help with managing their books. It could be a small builder that needs some marketing assistance. So using your skills to barter in and that way you can also obtain financing for your build. Credit cards. So I probably should have. Thank you, Lakeisha. Thank you so much. I probably should have put a disclaimer out as I started this conversation in saying that I am not a financial person. So these are suggestions, but you need to consult whoever you need to consult to make sure you're following the best process for you and all of those things. So let me put that out there. But credit cards, I have also shared that I maxed out every last one of my credit cards to finance my tiny house build. My credit took a hit, but I've also shared as you're building a tiny house that you have to know getting into, because the financing for a tiny house is a challenge, getting into it is going to take you'll take a financial hit, but as time passes, you'll come back from that and it'll absolutely be worth it. So credit cards, again, combinations of the things, savings, sponsorships, bartering, credit cards, all of the things that you can put together to finance the tiny house. Also contractor builder financing. So perhaps the builder, and I'm going to talk about RVIA financing in a bit, but perhaps the builder offers some type of financing. Sometimes builders have accounts with some of the big box companies like Lowe's, et cetera, and they are able to secure a different type of financing. So considering that, checking in with the builder if they offer any type of financing. Personal loans, again, credit unions, we'll talk about RVIA certifications, your 401k, in all of those things that you can consider if you have a relationship with the credit union, even outside of an RVIA loan. Considering personal loans. Again, my disclaimer, I am not a financial person. You have to do what's best for you and look into it as to what works best for you. And then there are also some sites that I am going to drop in the chat for financing. I'll also add them to the description of this video once it goes live. So personal loans. So again, there aren't the conventional mortgage loans for tiny houses that exist for conventional housing. So you have to consider different types of alternate financing for tiny houses. The two links that I dropped that I'll also make available in the video description are links to some sites that have combined some links for personal loans. Lightstream.com is from originally from SunTrust, which is now, I believe, Truist. They offer an RV loan. So Prosper.com is also a site that you can look at for tiny house financing. One of the things that I've heard, I don't know it specifically, but or I don't know it personally. One of the things that I've heard is that they require you to have a pretty stellar credit. I can't speak to that, but I also say don't not try just because that's what you've heard. So I'll put that out there, but also encourage you to still attempt to find a loan through those options. And then coming back to the credit union. So if you work with a builder that is RVIA certified, which is the certification required for builders who are building RVs. And so these specific builders go through a certification that allows them to be accredited, I guess is the best word, as an RVIA builder, an RVIA certified builder. With that, your tiny house built by them is considered an RV. And this is during financing is the time that you'd want to take advantage of that certification and call it an RV, because with that, you can get an RV loan through credit unions. Credit unions offer RV loans. And so you can then, if you work with an RVIA certified builder, you can get a RV loan for your tiny house. So this again would be a time that you'd want to call your tiny house an RV. You'd also want to call your tiny house an RV if you are trying to place it, and we'll talk about placement in just a minute. If you're trying to park it in an RV park that requires it to be an RV, then you'd want to show them that you have the RVIA certification. But if you're trying to place it, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes, if you're just trying to place it on land anywhere else, you do not want to call it an RV. So there's no way someone would know right off of the bat that it is RVIA certified. You'd get some documentation. I believe there's also a sticker. When you are trying to place it anywhere else and you're working with cities and counties, you do not want to call it an RV, because most cities and counties right off the bat say you cannot live in an RV. So be sure you know when to use your RVIA certification to your advantage. And that would be when you are trying to obtain a loan, if you're working with an RVIA certified builder, or if you're trying to place it in an RV park that requires it to be a certified RV tiny house. I understand that NOAA, which is also a certification, offers loans, but I did not verify that information. I didn't look into that, but I'll add that as a caveat that in addition to the RBIA certification, providing financing, NOAA might also. All right, personal financing, personal savings, sponsorships, bartering, credit cards, contractor builder financing, personal loans, credit unions, 401k, prosper.com, lightstream.com, the links that I dropped in the chat that I'll also make available in the description, and then your credit union RB loan if you're working with an RBI a certified builder. All right, that's financing. I'm going to stop here for a second before we talk about placement and see if there's some specific questions that I can answer. Um, all right. Let's see. Okay, Pat is saying, I thought about renting out or using my current home as an Airbnb to enable me to finance or buy straight out my tiny home. That is what a lot of people have done. They sell, if they have a traditional house, they sell the traditional house, or they rent out, like you're saying, some additional income to come in and use that funding, that money to finance their tiny house. So that is an excellent idea. Um, I have as Pat already knows, as we talk about placement, I offer a tool, a directory, so that you could list your tiny house for rent on Airbnb. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Hello, Deborah. Um, let's see. Okay, so Pat is saying her stick built would be 460 to 500 square feet. Okay, so Pat, you'll need to be sure. So there are some limitations to square footage for tiny houses on wheels that are built on custom tiny house trailers. So you'll need to ensure that what you're speaking to would be able to be accommodated on a custom tiny house trailer, the square footage that you're speaking to. Just FYI. Audra says, I have a question, but we'll wait until you're done just in case you address it while you're discussing it. Plus, I don't like speaking over people. All right, Audra coming through with the manners. I appreciate that. Okay, so drop your question if it was related to financing, and then we're going to talk about parking if you want to hold it, if your question is about parking. Thank you, Lakeisha. I appreciate you immensely, and you know that. Thank you so much. Hey, Day. Pat is asking, is a prefab tiny home more affordable than the custom built, and what are the pros and cons? So a prefab is a whole different beast. It's not going to be on a tiny house trailer. And so pros and cons, that's another conversation. Um, we talked about it in one of the tiny house meetups, so maybe I'll go through and have that conversation here, where we talk about the pros and cons. Thank you, Teresa, for y'all remember to like, share, subscribe, join Patreon, purchase merchandise, and all of the things. So thank you, Teresa. Shout out to Crystal, who is under the weather, who is also usually here in the chat, making sure we do all of that. That you all do all of that. So I want to give a shout out to Crystal. We're wishing you well soon. Lakeisha, hi Judith. We know you meant everyone. Let's see. Okay, Vera Diane is saying, if Danville is on your list, all right, Vera Diane. All right, thank you. You're very welcome, CZ. All right, let me see if I see some questions. Hello, Passionalisa. Welcome back. Um, okay, Audrey is asking, could you speak to the safety and insurance for a tiny house on wheels? Um, So I actually have a video. I can add that in the link. So where I talk to safety and insurance. I'll drop that video. I'll also drop the link to the folks that I know that cover tiny house insurance. From a safety perspective, there are several things that you have to think about, which are relative to winterization, which I talk about, safety as you're considering relocating. So there are several pieces, and that's a bigger conversation. But I do have a safety video that I'll drop the link to. For insurance, the unfortunately the state farms and the traditional insurance companies aren't going to offer insurance for a tiny house. Some of them, if you're tiny house is RVIA certified, then you can get insurance as you would an RV because it is technically considered an RV. So you would have that option for a tiny house. But for a tiny house on wheels that is not RVIA certified, the options for insurance are more limited. One of the things, so a couple of thoughts around insurance. So the trailer that my tiny house is built on has a VIN number, and so the but the VIN number is just like the VIN number that you have on an automobile, and so you can get insurance for that custom tiny house trailer. So that's just like if you know somebody who has a lawn service and they have a trailer that they carry their lawn equipment with. They have insurance because that trailer has a tag. It has a VIN number, a tag associated with it. So you can get insurance on that trailer. The difference, though, is the insurance company is just in their mind insuring a tiny house trailer or the trailer. If you were to try to make a claim and say, okay, so my trailer costs at the time that I bought I think my trailer cost like $7,500. If you were to try to make a claim, something happened to the house, and you were to try to make a claim, you would likely have some challenges with claiming more than the worth of that trailer. So that's something to consider. One of the thoughts that people have had early on in the movement is with the challenges with insurance, the money that you're saving from the smaller lifestyle, the more simplistic lifestyle, to put some of that money away so that if you had challenges in the future, you could be the insurance for your own home. And so that's kind of the thoughts around insurance. But I will add links to the couple of folks that I know that do provide tiny house insurance. I also say it's a little more expensive, but that's kind of to be expected when it's something that is more of a anomaly or a niche. Let's see. Gigi is asking, is there a specific place or area to place your tiny home? So we're going to talk about placement in just a few minutes. So thank you for that question. Pat is saying 12 by 42. Okay, so that's doable. I'm pretty sure a 12. Yeah, I think a 12 foot. I think a tiny house trailer can accommodate a 12-foot tiny house. But I think so. Audrey is asking, what prevents someone from stealing your tiny home when you're away? How does the insurance coverage work if something happens? And so I think I answered part of that question. If you have tiny house insurance through one of the sellers that I'm going to share, then you would go through the process of submitting a claim just like you would do for traditional tiny house insurance. I explained if you're just insuring the trailer and not the entire tiny house, then you're going to have some challenges there if you happen to have an issue. But again, I spoke to saving your money to be able to cover challenges. And then what's preventing, and I also talk about this in my safety video, what's preventing someone from stealing your tiny house. And so there are hitch locks for tiny houses. So the hitch that you have, that is the thing that you pull the tiny house, there are hitch locks for tiny houses that I encourage everyone to use for an RV, for a travel trailer, for all of the things. Um, there are also, let me step back and say, the smaller houses are the easier ones to steal. Just recently, someone had a tiny house stolen, and it's been a long time since I've seen that happen, but this just happened within the last couple of months. They had a smaller tiny house. It used to be a thing that happened frequently, 2015, 16, 17-ish. Um, but the smaller houses are easier to steal. A house like mine, if somebody was able to steal it, they'd be really good at their craft. Because I have, obviously, I have the sunroom and the screened-in porch attached to it. But if we talk about even before that, before I added that on, the size of my house is major, and so to try to steal something as big as my house, somebody is going to know where that is. The effort to try to steal it, again, the size of my house is major, so you've got to have the right truck to try to get it. I also tie my house down, which I talk about in safety. So my house is tied down from another safety perspective, from a weather perspective. So the size of the house is going to dictate how easy it is to steal. A hitch lock, tying your house down, which I talk about in the safety video, is going to be some of the things that help there. Hi, May. Let's see. Hey, Mary. Welcome. Let's see. Thank you, Bridget. Pat is asking, can you add your tiny home under your personal insurance plans? No. Insure it like personal property. I would say, well, let me not say no. I don't work in insurance. Try it and see how that goes. Sadiq is asking, can it be classified as an RV and an ADU? No. So on the East Coast, let's take this from the East Coast perspective. The answer is no, because for most of the areas on the East Coast, an ADU has to be on a foundation. So an RV and an ADU are totally separate things. On the West Coast, where they allow you to have a tiny house on wheels as an ADU, because they are working to address their housing crisis, and they're being a lot more creative than the East Coast is. An ADU can be a tiny house on wheels. Therefore, the tiny house on wheels, if it is a certified RVIA build, and that would mean an RV and an ADU are the same thing on the West Coast. Because again, the West Coast will allow you to have a tiny house on wheels as an ADU. They will also, in specific cities in the West Coast, because again, these decisions are made by city and county. That's not like California says or North Carolina says. It is by city and county. So there are specific cities in California that allow you to have a tiny house on wheels as an ADU. They also allow the ADU, the tiny house on wheels, to be owned by someone else outside of the conventional homeowner. On the East Coast, in most cities and counties, they require the homeowner to be the same owner of the ADU. We've been talking about this in the tiny house meetup. There is going to be a continued ongoing conversation about ADUs that Lakeisha is hosting for us. I will drop the link for the tiny house meetup once this goes live. There is an online option if you all want to join and participate in that to get some more information about ADUs. So that is the only way it would be an RV and an ADU. Um, so Passion Lisa's asking about, is the insurance really high to put it by the beach? Again, that would probably be on foundation, and I'm not exactly sure, but I think insurance is based on location. So as real estate is, so probably. Um, let's see. Mary is asking, have I mentioned prefab modular builders you recommend? Okay, so I can list some of the builders. I don't know that I know specific prefab modular builders, but I'll list my builders that I recommend. My list is not exhaustive. I have not done a lot more research in builders. I always say do your own due diligence. I do have a how to find builders video, so I will. I'm making notes because y'all know I'll forget. Um, I'll link to that video as well. Let's see. Let's see. Good afternoon, Geraldine. So Pat is saying I'd place a boot on my tiny home on wheels like they boot your car. So the hitch lock, they do the lock on your wheels, all of the things, absolutely. A hitch lock is, it goes specifically on the hitch, on the thing that has to connect to what is going to pull it. So if you put a hitch lock, if you put a lock on the hitch, then nobody can steal it. Yes, Mary, people do steal tiny houses. People suck. Let's see, mobile homes. Okay, so mobile homes are a whole different conversation, and they are within they are within the HUD government manufacturing. They're a whole different beast. The way you finance them, insurance, all of the things are different. Hello, Catherine. Very welcome, Audra. Okay, let me see. CZ is asking, what is an ADU? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. So accessory dwelling unit, I kind of think I got a video about that too. I get confused on what all I have out there. But an ADU, so think of a main house structure and the house in the backyard. That is an ADU. You see the smaller structure in the backyard, or like an apartment in a garage. Those are considered ADUs. They are accessory dwelling units, the accessory to the main dwelling. They are generally and traditionally on foundation. Um, Keisha has talked to us about it. Several people within the interviews that I've done have built ADUs, and so that is what an ADU is. All right, so let me make a note about that. Let's see. Yes, I had no idea the East Coast required the owner of the home to be the same owner for the tiny. So we're talking about, again, the smaller house on foundation in the backyard of the home, which is technically an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU, even though folks call it tiny houses. Their correct name is accessory dwelling unit, ADU. And on the East Coast, in most, again, these rules are made at the city and county level, but most of the cities and counties on the East Coast require the homeowner to be the same owner of that accessory dwelling unit. Hey, Tawana, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see. That is so true, Teresa. Thank you. Yes, kind of like a shed, but an accessory dwelling unit. There may be some cities and counties that allow you to do a shed to ADU conversion on the East Coast. I mean, that's a thing, but you have to definitely understand what the rules are for an ADU in your area, because it just depends on that area whether they allow a shed to ADU conversion, a shed to tiny house on foundation conversion, or if they're requiring you to start it from foundation and build like a traditional house. Um, hey, Latasha. Okay. All right. So I think I've answered all of the questions about financing. I am going to move into talking about placement of a tiny house, which is the bigger question, um, on where you can place a tiny house. And all right, so let me share my screen again. Y'all should be proud because I'm prepared today. All right, where can I place my tiny house on wheels? Again, I've already done 3 videos on this. I will link to the 3 videos in case I don't cover some of the same information that I've shared before. I put in the work to talk about this. And so, because this again is the #1 question, where can I place my tiny house on wheels? So you want to explore all your options. Personal property is a place that you could put a tiny house on wheels. There are cities, most cities and counties do not allow tiny houses on wheels to be placed on a piece of property and be the only structure there. They don't even, most cities and counties don't, and I hate to say most, but I'm going to say the majority. They don't allow tiny houses on wheels in many cities and counties. So even if you have your own land, and most people feel like, well, I bought the land so I can do what I want with it. That is not correct. There are still rules. There's zoning and building code enforcement have some rules that say what can go on property. Zoning is a big thing for it. Tiny houses on wheels are mostly considered as RVs in many areas, and so they already have the rules that you can't live in a RV. So, personal property, the way people will do this is to buy a piece of land that already has existing structures on it, that already have the utilities, your water, electricity, all of the things that you'll need for the tiny house. Obviously, it's not going to be property in a neighborhood with an HOA, or it's not going to be property where somebody can be all in your business as to what you're doing. This is going to be done covertly, in a gray area, under the radar. Those are all of the words that I use when talking about this. And so this looks like you buying this property or having this property that has existing structures on it. So if you think about the way that I have existed, and it kind of runs into backyards, there are building structures already existing that have water and utilities. Even if the structure maybe needs to be updated, maybe you bought some land that has a house that's run down on it. You would do all of the work first to get that building structure up to par so that it has working utilities, do all of that up front, and then once you're done with the city and county, you've done all your permitting, they've come out and done all the inspections, all of the things, and you're done with them. They don't have to come out to your property anymore. Then you could covertly, in the gray area, under the radar, place a tiny house on wheels on that property. And what you would do is get the utilities that you need for that tiny house from those existing structures. Obviously, those houses would need to have enough power to support a tiny house on wheels. Most houses, as I understand it, have 200 amps, which should be plenty to support. And then again, to connect to the existing structures, you then do not call out an electrician who is going to require you to pull permits, or is going to pull permits, because then the county has to come back out and do inspections, and then they're going to say, oh no, this isn't possible. So you need to find somebody who is okay with working in that gray area, under the radar, covertly, who will then, from the existing structures, provide the electricity for the tiny house. So that's how you could do it on personal property. There are very few places that are going to allow you to place a tiny house on wheels on personal property as the sole structure. Rural areas are going to be the ones that might consider it, but again, they have rules in, it's not always possible. There are a few counties, cities, most of them in the Midwest, kind of towards the West Coast, that allow tiny houses on wheels on personal property. But you have to do your research because, again, the rules are made at the city and county level. So I cannot say it's okay in Missouri. You have to do your research at that city and county level. All right, backyards. I just kind of touched on this. The backyard of someone's house that already has an existing structure with power, water, all the utilities that you're going to need. That is what I just really explained in the option for personal property. That is what I have done for many, many years, being in someone's backyard. It is not somewhere, the backyard isn't somewhere that is fully advertised to everybody else because once people see what you got going on, that's how you get found out. And so they end up telling on you on purpose or accidentally when they call a city or the county to say, hey, I'm interested in putting a tiny house in my backyard. What are the rules? And then they say it's not allowed. And then they say, oh, my neighbor has one. And then that's how you get found out. And they didn't actually mean to tell on you, but they told on you. And so then you then have to move. So all of this is done in the gray area, under the radar, covertly. So that you can live in your tiny house, so in a backyard. Obviously, a tiny house community is going to be something that's already established for tiny houses, so you can place your tiny house in a tiny house community. RV parks. Some RV parks allow tiny houses on wheels. Some of them require that the tiny house on wheel be RVIA certified, so you'd have to check with that specific RV park. For Black and brown folks, in addition to checking with the RV park to see if they allow tiny houses, you also want to do your research for the area to ensure that it's going to be safe from a perspective of safety from racism. As I've shared with you all before, I have had to move my house once from an RV park because of issues with racism, as well as from a rural area, a farm, where I had to move my house. So you Black and brown folks, you got to do a little bit more due diligence. In the other tiny house placement videos, I talk about how you go about finding backyards to place your tiny house on if you're doing this by yourself. I am going to talk about my application, how you can find it. But if you're doing this yourself, I talk about the ways to secure that in those videos. So I'll be linking to those videos, and then you can refer back to how you go about finding those backyards. Farms in rural areas. So rural areas tend to be a little more accepting of tiny houses because they're already used to dealing with RVs and mobile homes and some of those things. And so that is an option for you, where I think in rural areas, most people feel like people mind their business a little bit more in rural areas. The socioeconomic structure in rural areas is different from major cities, and so they're used to non-traditional housing. They're used to somebody's got some financial challenges and they're living in an RV. It might not technically be legal, but again, as I understand it, people in these areas mind their business a little bit more. Again, for Black and brown folks, you're going to have to do more research to ensure that it is an area that is safe for you. Rural areas aren't always the safest spaces for Black and brown folks. So that's something that I'll put out there. And then another option for placement for a tiny house is, as we were just talking about, as an ADU in some cities in California. I just spoke about that, how there are some cities in California that will allow a tiny house on wheels to be placed in a backyard legally and that tiny house does not have to be owned by the main homeowner in some cities in California, where they are a little more progressive. So let me see. Before I go into the application, I am going to see if there are any more questions specifically to this before I move into the application. Thank you, Carlisa. Y'all are on point today. I appreciate y'all so much. Let's see. Let me see if there's some questions. Let's see. Okay, WLJ is saying I checked in my area and the city does not permit anything larger than a storage shed and it can't be a living space. Okay, so then that means, WLJ, that your area does not allow ADUs. Not all areas permit ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So that is a thing. Unfortunately, that's just not a thing. I think when you talk about zoning, you have to also talk about, so the basis of zoning, which is what determines what can be placed on a piece of property. The core tenets of zoning are built in racism. So many years ago, when they started uh, determining that with the single home, I've lost my word. Let me go back. A way to legally keep folks out of living in certain areas was done through zoning. When the civil rights movement happened and folks could technically move where they wanted to move, they still had challenges of how do we keep these folks out of our neighborhoods? And so that is when the single home dwelling became a big thing, and that is how they kept folks out of certain areas. Early on, zoning also included actual language that said you can't sell to a black person. That language was at one point removed when they determined it was illegal, but the zoning still stood in ways to, without saying it, we keep these folks out of certain areas. And so the ADU thing is a big thing relative to racism, because if I have the main house and I have a smaller structure in the backyard, that means somebody else can live in that house. And I want to be sure I'm keeping the undesirables, and I'm using quote fingers, the undesirables out. And so that is what zoning, that was the basis of zoning. And that is why still some of the areas don't allow things like that, because they're still, it's not even covertly, they're still trying to keep folks out. And so that is why. um let's see, GG's, do you have a group that kind of help each other on bills placement, things like that? I'm not exactly sure the answer what your question is, but I think my application helps in that way, that I'm getting ready to talk about in just a minute. um yes, counties want their property tax money. That is it, follow the money. um I'm told South Carolina also has an ADU ownership law. Yes, most of the cities and counties on the East Coast require the ADU, the smaller structure in the back on foundation, to be owned by the homeowner. I love catching blessings. Hey, Kitty, welcome, welcome. Hey, Tampa's Creek. Uh, WLJ is saying if people would stick to the questions that are being asked and don't volunteer any additional information, they usually can avoid telling on themselves and or others. I don't believe folks know how to do that well, and that's how you get found out. Oh, thank you, Audra. Let's see. Yes, so Audra is saying, how can the American dream be fulfilled if we're being taxed out of the equation? Even with not being able to own a parcel with a tiny home, you can't win for losing. Completely disgusting. Audra, one of the things we talk about here often is how the American dream was not built for us. The American dream was not built for people who don't have money. And so that is unfortunately one of the things that you have to factor in. And that is also why you have to be creative, sometimes being willing to take risk, be under the radar, covertly, all of the things in that gray area, because the American dream is not a dream for all of us. So yeah. Let's see. Yes, the history of zoning is sad and shameful. Absolutely is. There are some videos that talk about zoning. Maybe I'll try to find one and add it to the video description. Absolutely. Hi, Cammie. Welcome. All right. I think I've answered all the questions about um, that you all have had, and so now I am going to. All right. So I've talked about options for where you can place your tiny houses on wheels. I am going to link the other videos that I've discussed this in more detail, how to go about advertising and finding a tiny house on wheels. So all of those things, I'll talk about that. I'll link to the videos where I've talked about that in detail. And so right now, what I am sharing is the application that I have developed that took a minute for me to develop, but it is here. And it is the Cooperative Communities Directory. It can also be found as findtinyhouseparking.com. And this is the directory to help answer the number one question: where can I park a tiny house? This is a membership directory, meaning it requires membership. It is not free, um, except for, let me go back. It is not free, period. Let me say that. I had someone send me a message to say that I should allow it to be free while I am building up participation in the app, and I absolutely am not going to do that because I have invested in this application. So I will step it back to say I developed this application after several years of manually with an Excel spreadsheet capturing tiny house folks who had tiny house land properties available for tiny houses, and people, tiny house owners who were looking for tiny houses. And so I would, on a monthly basis, send out an email to those folks telling the owners, landowners, who was out there looking for tiny houses, and vice versa, telling the people interested in finding property for their tiny houses, the areas where we had tiny houses, tiny house property available. This started, let me step back. This started, as I just shared a few minutes ago, that I've had to move my house twice because of problems with racism in an RV park and on a farm in a rural area. I wanted to provide a service to offer safety in tiny house placement, because the number one question in the movement is, where can I place a tiny house? And Black and brown folks also then have to ask, where can I place a tiny house and also be safe? And so that was the initiative behind the manual process when I was collecting all of this information via spreadsheet. What happened was, the spreadsheet, the process grew, and it became too much to continue to do manually. And that is when I looked into developing an application to do it. Teresa was kind enough to connect me with her cousin Billy, who had developed his own application, and I pursued that for our considered using that tool, but I also knew I needed some more. I wanted to have some more options for it, and so I ultimately went with a different directory and created this directory: Cooperative Communities, findtinyhouseparking.com. All right, so going, my answer to why, so the person who sent me an email that was frustrated, that said I should open this up for free while I grow the directory, and my answer is absolutely not. I am here on Sundays giving for free. I have talked about placement for tiny houses on wheels in several videos. I invested in this application, and I at some point get to recoup my funds. The free stuff is what I do here. The free stuff are the videos, but this application is not free. It is not expensive right now. I don't intend to make it expensive, but at some point I will likely increase the prices. Right now, I am also offering property owners a discount, and I'm gonna type that right now. Property owners, I am offering them a discount. No, I can't type and talk. Okay, so I'm typing. Um, Property owners can use Collective Communities 25. Make sure I spell that right. I did. Property owners discount 25% off. Collective Communities 25 is the code that you can use to get 25% off to list your properties that you have available for um, rent. No, that you have available for tiny house parking. So it is not for free. It is not very expensive. This application was not free. It was not cheap. I put a lot of time and effort into creating the tool that I wished had been available when I was, or as I'm looking for tiny house parking. That is what went into this tool. And so that is what this tool is. Now, I'm going to walk us through it. Thank you, Carlisa, saying you don't need to give us anything. I am always, Lakeisha will attest to the fact that she keeps me on point oftentimes when I'm trying to just give stuff away. Um, so I can't give this one away because I've invested in it, and yeah. Let's see. Pat, I think you're saying I was on that site and didn't see many homes for sale. Okay, so that is what I'm addressing now. I am just launching it, so obviously it has to build. Um, so that's the thing. There aren't many homes for sale here now. I am building the directory. That is what I was just addressing. Let's see. Let me, before I get going and not paying attention. This is findtinyhouseparking.com. Yes, Mary, there is racism in zoning. There's racism. Racism. This country is built on racism, white supremacy. So mostly everything has some racism built into it. Let's see. Absolutely, Diane. Before I go into this, thank you so much, Pamela. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Carlisa. Okay, I'm checking the chat before. Absolutely, Day. It ain't free. Absolutely. No, it is. Yes, we can be nervy and wrong, and the whole email had a tone to it. So yeah. Um, Thank you. All right. So nothing in life is not right. Thank you. All right. So let me focus here. So this is the website. It is also available on your mobile device, and so this is the main page that you come to when you log into either cooperativecommunities.org or findtinyhouseparking.com. This main page, you're able to search tiny houses for rent or for sale. And so this is the only information that is available and open to anyone who wants to search. Again, I am building the directory, so there aren't tiny houses for sale or for rent available at this point, but I already know it's going to grow. This is a tool that's needed in the movement. All right, so this is the area. So anyone, if you don't have a membership, you could still search for tiny houses for rent or sale. And I'm going to come back and talk about those in just a few minutes. All right, the upcoming events are listed here that I have going on. Remember, I talked to you all about the meetups that we're working on. So September's monthly meetup, if you want to sign up for where I was telling you that we are going to, I think that might work. Maybe not. We'll be talking about ADUs in more detail at that meetup. Lakeisha is going to be sharing with us. You can be in person or online. Okay, so here is a video to show you a quick, give you a quick tour to see how the directory works. Everything is locked down, so unless you're, except for once tiny houses, there are listings of tiny houses for rent or for sale. As of right now, everything else requires membership. So here is a video if you want to watch to see how the directory works and see to see all of the details. I'm going to step us through it, but I want to let everybody know there is another tour here to show you how the directory works. All right. So if you are looking for properties for tiny house parking and you are a member of the directory, what you will find when you go to properties for tiny house parking, you have the option to search property owners. Poplar Creek Tiny Home Village already signed up for the service, and I appreciate them so much. So you would see here the properties available for parking. You can also search. You can search for properties based on whether you're interested in a farm or a rural area, parking, backyard, urban areas, RV parks, campgrounds, if you are interested in raw, undeveloped land, or a tiny house community. So you have the option to search specifically by property type. You can also search by city or zip code. Those are your search options. You can also look at the details of someone's listing. So once you get here and you find some property owners, you then view their listing. All of the information that they want to provide about their property is available here. So you've got all of the information about their company details, what types of tiny houses they accept on the property, whether it's a Black-owned property, yes or no. So the directory is open to everyone, but if you're specifically looking for a Black-owned property, that option is there. Because I will say this was developed, as I just said a few minutes ago, for us to be safe in the movement. Everyone else that advertises here, I ask them to be aware of the reasoning why this was developed, and if they're not a Black and brown person, to be supportive of safety and to be understanding of why that is needed. But that information is listed here. This was designed initially to help us not have to deal with racism in the community. Before somebody comes for me and says, oh, that's racist, move on. All right, so then you get the property location, what rental terms and lengths this property owner allows, when their property is available, how many tiny houses they can accommodate, and what available utilities utilities are available there. Power and water are available on site in this sample. You can also see they can provide pictures of the property, and again, this is a sample, so they can provide pictures of the property, show you what's available on the property. Then if you're interested in contacting them, over to the right-hand side, here is where you would reach out and send them a message. Hey, I'm interested in your property. Can we talk? And you can set up a conversation. You can set up and have them email you. So that is the properties for tiny house parking. Owners can list their information. All right, tiny house owners seeking parking. This is where current and future tiny house owners would come in and they create their profile. And I'm going to show you the listing in just a few minutes. So if you were a property owner looking for someone to park on your property. So this works for, if this is cooperative communities, everybody here should get something out of using this tool and these connections. Properties for tiny house parking. The people who own those properties, you're then going to find someone to rent your property. If you're selling your property, that's your business. This is more for rental, but if you want to have a conversation with somebody about selling it, that is absolutely doable within the application. And sorry, I was reading something, got thrown off. But this is for renting. So you then make money on renting your land, your backyard, your all of the things to a tiny house owner. So you make money, while in return for that tiny house owner, you are providing them a safe space to park their tiny house. So there is a win-win for everybody there. And I'm going to talk about the other wins, but there's a win there for the tiny house owner as well as the tiny house property owner. This isn't all one-sided. This is cooperative community so that everybody is making money. Okay, so if the property owner is interested in finding tiny house owners for their property, they can proactively do that. You can come in and search for current tiny house owners. This would be people who currently own a tiny house, or you could search for, maybe your land's not ready right now. You could search for a future tiny house owner, and then you would be able to find either of those two categories. You can also search by people in your city or your zip code. You can search by city or zip code. So let's look at a listing of a tiny house owner. Tiny house owners, they come in and they enter their information. So this is a current tiny house owner. I borrowed this from Tree, who attended my very first workshop, built his tiny house within a couple of months after my workshop. And this was an ad he had put together as he was seeking tiny house parking a few years ago. Here the tiny house owner tells what type of tiny house they have, and this can be stick built, this could be a travel trailer, this could be whatever. There's different options for the types of tiny houses. They would indicate what type of tiny house they have. This helps you decide if you would want to allow that type of tiny house on your property. And if it's other, then they describe what type of tiny house they have. And the tiny house owner indicates what type of rental lengths they're interested in, whether their house is on grid and requires electricity or off grid and they don't. And then they give details about their structure, the width, the length, and how soon they're looking for placement. If it's a future tiny house owner, they then indicate when they anticipate their build will be complete. They can also add a photo album to give you an opportunity to see what their tiny house looks like. So they can add a whole photo album of pictures of themselves, of their tiny house, of their family, whatever they want to add to their photo album, that's what they do. And they indicate what it is that they need from tiny house parking. You can then send them a message. You can select this button, send a message, or you can send them a message over here. The same way you can do for tiny house owners, land owners, property owners. All right. Community building and networking. This section is for those people who are interested in going in with other like-minded individuals in purchasing land together. So maybe you homeschool your children. You're interested in other families who are interested in that. Maybe you want to create a farm. Maybe you want whatever it is that you want to do, and you want to co-opt that with other people. This is what this community building and networking allows you to find other like-minded people to build community with. Maybe you want to divide the cost of the purchase of the land with this group. That is what this allows the connecting for. And so you can indicate whether you already have an existing community and you're looking for other like-minded people to join you within your community, or you are interested in a future community, or it's in development. And so those are the two options. And you can search for people within those two options. You can again search by city or zip code. And so to view a listing, again, this is a sample. You can indicate if this is an existing community sample. So you indicate where your community is, your area, I'm sorry, your area that you are looking for like-minded people. You can indicate your, you can provide articles that talk about what you're trying to create. There can be discussions on the articles. The question here is an article about building how intentional communities are shaping the future. Y'all can have a whole conversation around this. You can add photo albums if you're looking for, I went out and I saw some RV park for sale. Add the photo album. Hey, what do y'all think about this RV park? You can add the photo album and have conversations around that. You can have discussions. What are your requirements for an intentional community? So you can connect with other people that are like-minded, have some conversations on what it looks like for you all for an intentional community. This is your community building and networking. This is conversation. This is meant to, this is for, I always see the post on social media is like, I wish I could find some other families who want to go in and buy some land, and so we can create a community. That is what this is for, community building and networking. You can contact people the same way. Send a message here using the button, or by over on the right-hand side, send them a message. All right, tiny house builders. Okay, so this, in my mind, is for the general contractor who is building tiny houses but does not have a big company, does not have um, uh, the the advertisements out there. People don't know they exist. Y'all know sometimes my words don't come, so we already talked about that. Y'all already know. They don't have the whatever the word is I'm trying to come up with that the big companies do. So this is a small builder, a small company, a general contractor, somebody who builds tiny houses, and they want to advertise their services. And they would then, and I'm not, big companies can also advertise, but when I was thinking about this, this was the opportunity for a small builder to get out there and advertise their information and services and grow their work. So you can come in here and you could search for a builder for tiny houses on foundation or tiny houses on wheels. You can also search by city and zip code. And so a sample profile for a tiny house builder, they would go in and add all of their information. They can add their resume. They can indicate whether it's a Black-owned business, whether they are licensed, the year they were licensed, if they offer tiny house build certifications, what their specialty is, whether they build on foundation or on wheels, the number of previous builds that they've completed. Do they have references available? Small businesses, yes, Pat. Whether they offer financing and their company information. Then they can list photo albums of the bills that they have completed. This is, so I will say, and this is in the section that says how cooperative communities work, one of the things I have said in that is do your due diligence. This is what I, this is one of the things that I'm always talking about. Do your due diligence. I am not vetting any of the people on this site. I'm not vetting the property owners. I'm not vetting the tiny house owners. I'm not vetting the builders. I'm not vetting anybody who wants to build community. I am not vetting the people who are selling or renting their tiny houses. I'm not doing any of that work. I am providing the resource for people to connect. As with anything, you want to do your own due diligence. You want to, the questions that I have asked here are part of the due diligence that I suggest. Do you have certification? Do you have previous bills experience? Do you have some references? So those are the questions that I suggest that you ask as you're vetting these people. And then this is where you would then further the conversation and ask for, provide me those references. Let me see your your GC license. Or you can, if they say, yes, I have a license, once you have their name and their company name and you know where they're located, you can, general contract licensing information is public information. So you could look up their information. You want to speak to their references. But I am providing the tool to start these conversations. If you see somebody you wanted to connect with, you can send them a message. You can use this section over here on the right hand side to connect with them. Tiny house builders can also go look at tiny house owners. And so they could proactively reach out to say, hey, I'm in your area. I'm interested in building you a tiny house. So they can connect. Vice versa, tiny house owners, future tiny house owners who are looking for a builder can search for a builder. People who own land who potentially want to create community on their land. They want to build tiny houses on their land. They can then connect with a tiny house builder. I cannot tell you the number of times people have asked me, do you know a black builder? I don't. This is an opportunity for black builders to list their services and information. Obviously, again, I'm going to say this for probably the third time. This site is open to everyone to advertise, to use, to do all of the things. I have given priority. It was designed with priority of black and brown folks because of the challenges that we have in being safe and being seen and advertising our services. Black builders are considered minority builders for a reason. This is a tool to get in front of the people that are interested in their services. All right, tiny houses for sale or rent. Again, this is the option that is, so people who are selling their tiny houses, they have to also be members of the site, but their information is open and available to the public in addition to the members of the site. So you can come in and you can search for tiny houses for rent or for sale or for both. And when you think about renting, this could be somebody who has an ADU. And Mary, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute. They might have an ADU on their property that they rent out, a small house on their property, a tiny house on foundation on their property that they rent out. They could advertise that. It could be on Airbnb. They could also advertise here, or it could be a tiny house for sale. And tiny houses for sale can be stick-built tiny houses on wheels. They can be schoolies, they can be vans, and or other. And the person would then indicate what type of tiny house it is, and all of the details, whether it's new or pre-owned, how many beds, how many baths, whether they are able to offer financing, and then details around the square footage. And these are, again, sample tiny houses for sale or for rent. And then you can see all of the details about said tiny house. You can also thumb through their photo album of the tiny house, and all of the details about said tiny house would be available. And then you can contact them if you're interested in their tiny house that they have for sale. Okay. I have gone through the entire site. So you have the option for tiny house parking. You have the option for tiny house owners seeking parking, community building and networking, tiny house builders, tiny houses for sale or for rent. I'm pretty damn proud of my site here. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. And now I am going to look into the chat and see what questions y'all have. All right, I got to scroll back because I see y'all been talking. Let's see. All right, I'm looking forward to that, to have you. Yes, I'm not doing free. Happy Sunday, Elle. Glad you're here. Thank you, Mary. Mary, I'm going to come back to your ADU question. Camia, I did answer that question. You probably asked it before I answered it. The homes that I post for sale, your question is, the homes that you post for sale, do you research the seller's information before posting? No, I'm not doing any of the research for anybody that is participating in the site. That would be way too much, way too time consuming for me. So do your due diligence in every way as you would. I am providing the opportunity for the directory for connection, but you have to do your due diligence. If there is a way in the system to provide review, so if you find something that is not up to par, then you can report that and provide the review. My hope is that because people who are selling or renting tiny houses are required to be members of the directory, that the fact that they have to pay to be a member would kind of dissuade them from doing shady stuff, because they then have to pay out of pocket. If you think about like Facebook Marketplace, where people are advertising tiny houses, and often it's scams, that's free. This requires some a membership. This requires payment. So I'm hoping that helps dissuade people. Sometimes people are willing to pay money for scams, but do your own due diligence is what is encouraged. And as you sign up for the site, there's a thing that says, "I understand due diligence is required," because y'all know I'm big on that. Um, Gigi is saying, "You always give." I appreciate this. I've been trying to do this for years and still trying to work on it. Thank you. Um, oh, wow. So Mary just said on tiny house listings, you have to pay for every viewer. Interesting. Um, I have I have put maybe blood, sweat, and tears into the development of this site. My perfectionism really got in my way with this site, which is why it took so long to get it out here, because there was a way I envisioned it working in my head, knowing what is needed, and I wanted the site to do all of the things. And the site I chose was not initially actually developed this way, so I had to do a lot of add-on development and pay for some add-on development. So this is a labor of love for sure. Absolutely. If it's of value to you, you will pay for it. Thank you, Pat. So, okay, Teresa's saying the link for the meetup isn't working. I wasn't sure that that link was. I'll drop it in just a minute um, to add it. You give so much of yourself, and still some are never satisfied. Your knowledge is valuable, and you are no less worthy of receiving the residuals of intellectual property than anyone else. Thank you. I might have clutched my pearls when somebody said, "Is it this should be offered for free?" But anyway. Vera Diane is saying, "Have you considered adding a female-owned property as well? Also, if I'm not black or brown and welcoming of all people, is there a way to communicate this?" So, let me share my screen. Um in the how the cooperative communities work, I explain that the site was right here. The service was designed to support the specific challenges faced by the BIPOC community and to prioritize their safety and success within the movement. However, everyone is invited to the community to utilize the services provided herein, as we welcome anyone interested in supporting racial equity in the tiny house movement. Racism cannot be the reason the BIPOC community is not successful in the tiny house movement. So that is provided in the instructions on how the community works. There is also some frequently asked questions. Who can join cooperative communities? Everyone. We welcome everyone interested in supporting racial equity and safety in the tiny house movement. While the matching service was originally designed to prioritize the safety and success of the BIPOC community in the tiny house movement, due to racism experienced in rural areas and RV parks where tiny houses are most often allowed. I think there's a period needed in there somewhere. It is open to participation to everyone who understands the need for such a service and respects and supports the mission. There is no way someone would come to this and think this is black only black for black people. Um, off the bat, the question about whether the business is black owned is a question. There is nothing here that is restrictive to saying this is only for black people. So um, outside of explaining how and why the service was developed, I don't see why this would be, other than the fact that some people are going to know that I created it, and some people outside of the black and brown community won't support it because I created it. That's something I can't focus on. That's something I don't care about. I ain't trying to get their money. If they don't want to spend their money with me, they don't have to spend their money with me. But I don't think there's anything here. And Mary, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've seen the site. Is there anything that you would feel is restrictive to say this isn't for you or for folks who look like you? Let me know. But I pri- prioritized black and brown folks with the question, is this a black owned business? The When somebody comes in to say, isn't that racist? I have said before, so the default in business is white folks. That is the default. For black and brown folks, you are listed as a minority business. The default for white people when they're looking for businesses, whether they want to admit it or not, is generally they're looking for someone who looks like them, whether they want to admit it or not. There doesn't have to be a question of whether this is a white owned business, because that is the majority of the business owners in so many categories. That is why you have the listings for minority business owners. I have prioritized minority business owners within this app to be able to indicate that they are a black owned business, because whether it is by default or whether it is on purpose, we too have the should have the ability to search and do business with someone who looks like us, because the default again is not our business. If we don't support our businesses and the default is that those folks are looking for people who look like them, who is supporting our business? We have to support our businesses. So I am going to step off of that, but Mary, I am again defaulting to ask you if there's anything here that you felt like was exclusive, and I'm open to that conversation. Um, so yeah, uh, it's right, Audra. Um, I agree, Pat. 100%. I'm going to drop the link for the meetup. Thank you, Cammie. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Elle. Okay, I'm looking to see if there's some questions I might have missed. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Pat. Right. Katrina is saying, please don't get on here advertising your personal products unrelated to tiny houses. That I agree with that. I also feel like because there's the membership required, that might keep some folks out, but we'll see. Cammie is saying, how are these businesses and owners finding you, Jewel? Obviously, I'm doing my own advertising, so word of mouth, you sharing. Um, I'm sharing this everywhere. I know that I have a database of people who I've connected with over the years, so I am marketing to them as well with my newsletter. But word of mouth and you all sharing is often a way to get this information out. Me sharing it here on YouTube, Find Tiny House Parking, that is one of the ways that I hope to get this information out. But I, again, am open to suggestions if you think there's something, another way I can get the information out. I also hope to be on some of the folks' podcasts to advertise this to other people within the tiny house movement who have followings that I can get this information out. Let me see. Yes, I am marketing on other platforms, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Cynthia's asking, would the label for a minivan conversion into tiny house living be changed to an RV? Um, a van would be probably fall into other, like there are so many options that would probably fall into other. But because a person can provide a description and pictures, they can indicate what it is. Sometimes it's hard to get every category. So there is an other category. Um, Thank you, Cammie. I am. All right. This is the easiest way to remember the site. It is Cooperative Communities, because that is the intent of communities working together. But here is the link, findtinyhouseparking.com. I'm pretty sure I see Bridget saying you only see something. Oh, that's it. Let's see. Bajan Rooted, I just dropped it. Findtinyhouseparking.com. Findtinyhouseparking.com. Let's see. Let me see if there's some questions. Questions. Thank you, Brooke Ann. Thank you, Sheila. Vera Diane is asking the same thing. Y'all can help me get the word out. I'm trying to do all the things and share this information. Thank you, Sadiq. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful site and very comprehensive, but I don't see a link to the app or add-on. It is findtinyhouseparking.com and or cooperativecommunities.org, but findtinyhouseparking.com is the easiest way to get to it. Let's see. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Vaughn. Good point about money for ballot resources. Yes. Audrey is asking, will Elizabeth be contributing to the site to direct us in forming a resilient community within the tiny home community, especially for a senior like me? I will be seeing Elizabeth next week. I'm not exactly sure where she is and what it is that she's doing, but if she has a community that is available for advertising, I'm sure she'll, if there's a way for her to advertise within the site, I would say yes, she would do so. Okay, I'm reading the comments. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so Mary, I think this is your answer. Not at all. I think that's the answer. That was the question I was asking. Was there anything about this that seemed exclusive? And I think Mary is saying not at all. Thank you. I hate to put you on the spot, Mary, but I appreciate last. Okay, Mary saying last thing I thought. I hate when I'm the the black friend resource and white people go to me to answer a question. But you and I know that we have a connection, so that is why I felt comfortable asking you that. And I didn't want to put you on the spot or make you uncomfortable. But thank you for answering that question. Um, I love how you answer the questions with such grace, directness, and respect. Thank you so much. Um, Brooke is asking, what is the maximum size of the tiny house on foundation? I am a landowner in a rural area. I am a minority female of color. So on foundation, you're going to be dealing with the city, the county rules. And so the maximum size, what you can build on foundation is going to be determined by that specific county, that specific city's rules. And so whatever their maximum size, whatever their rules are, you would have to determine that with those people. It is not like a blanket across a state, or the rules are going to vary by city and by county. Thank you, Kitty. Uh, Absolutely. All right. Buenos dias, Katrina. Buenos dias. Um, Pat is saying to be part of a collective community involves being actively involved, resourceful, and not lazy, and not wanting all the information handed to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, all right. So, Vera Diane is asking, can I explain who Elizabeth is? Let me make a note. Yeah, make another note. Elizabeth White is a dear friend of mine, and she wrote the book 55 and Faking It. And I interviewed her not so long ago. She is working on creating community, not necessarily tiny houses on wheels, but creating community for seniors, as we consider more and more seniors are alone, and need community for mental, um, and health, wellness, all of the things. And so that is the area that she works in. Again, it's not specific to tiny houses on wheels. I did interview her. I'll add the link to her video in the video description. And that was what the question is. That is who Elizabeth White is, and a good friend of mine. All right. As always, I'm going to drop the link to get on my calendar. If you'd like to talk to me one-on-one, I'm happy to do so. I do offer coaching and consultations. I do hope you will help me get the information out about the site. Um, I thank you all for the folks that have shared some love today. I appreciate that. If you would like to join me on Patreon, so I do have a Patreon community, and we meet once a month, and we talk in the community. Let me go back. We talk in the community. We meet once a month on Zoom, so that we can connect us a little bit. If I were to explain the difference between these Sundays, it is an opportunity for folks to be on Zoom, to be on camera, to participate in conversation, to hold each other accountable, all of the things. And so that is what I offer in my Patreon community. If you are interested in participating, I would love to have you there. I also have some merchandise. I am dropping my merchandise link. I am going to go get the meetup link in just a minute. Um, Let me do that right now while I'm talking. Um, let me do that while I am talking. So we are hosting a mix and mingle weekend is what I have been calling it. I am going to drop the link for that right now. That is the link for, I should have put that, September. Let me do this again. September. There you go. September's meetup. I just dropped the link again. I am calling it a mix and mingle meetup. Mix and mingle weekend. The Saturday, September the 28th, we are supporting Poplar Creek Tiny House Community, and they're having their grand opening at the Tiny House Community. So you can visit tiny houses that they have available for you to tour. It is a Saturday. Registration is required. Poplar Creek Tiny House Community. They have the registration on their website. On their IG page. I don't know if it's on their website. But on IG, Poplar Creek, they are having a grand opening on Saturday, September the 28th. And so Lakeisha Meller, who has done the ADU presentation, who is a member of the Soul Collective community, who is a dear friend, who is all of the things, is coming over from Cali. And so she and I, and possibly Chris Strathy, if he's available, will be going to the open house, the grand opening on that Saturday. And then on Sunday, we are hosting a meetup. It is an in-person meetup, or if you would like to join by virtually to participate in the conversation, you can do that as well. There's a link available for virtual participation. That is on Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the link that I dropped. Registration, it is a free event, but registration is required. So the Mix and Mingle weekend is Saturday and Sunday, September the 28th and the 29th. Saturday we'll be at Poplar Creek. Sunday we will be in Charlotte at a meetup space to get together. And again, there is in-person and virtual participation available. So I did just drop that link again. Absolutely, Sadiq. This is my love. Oh, thank you, Bridget. I'm happy that you joined the community. Felicia is asking, how many pounds is your tiny house for trailer purposes? So I have a triple axle trailer. I have forgotten how much weight my trailer can support. It is per axle. I've forgotten right off the top. And I've forgotten. So the challenge with my house sitting, I've been in my house for 10 years. To be underweight as I'm planning to move my house, I take some of the stuff out of the house because you just don't have an idea of what you brought into the house. So I take stuff out of the house, like I would likely take my couch out and move the house just to accommodate for stuff that I haven't factored in that I brought into the house. But I haven't added furniture to the house or cabinetry or anything like that. It is, and so I'm overcompensating for that when I take stuff out of the house because it is just living stuff, clothes, products that I've added to the house, which generally are not going to overweigh my trailer. I'm not adding furniture and stuff to the house. So thanks for that question. But trailers, the weight is determined per axle. Absolutely, Pat. Thank you for being here. All right, September's meetup link is there. Join me on Patreon. Let's see. To get on my calendar, what is Pat doing? Let me see. Let me see if there's something else. Thank you, Katrina. I miss you, girl. There was another question I think I missed. Okay, so Mary is saying, when I saw you in Black Home Ownership, I didn't associate it with the site. I associated it more with your experience and what makes you an expert. AKA, why would someone want to, and what makes you an expert? And why would someone want to trust and buy into this website? Okay. Thank you, Mary. Oh, thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much. Um, Felicia is saying, what vehicle size would you need to pull a house like yours? My house is 28 feet on a triple axle trailer, so you need a dually, something 350 and 350 a Ford 350 and up. I don't. If you're not going to be moving your house all the time, you don't necessarily have to own the vehicle. I call a tow service. They already have the vehicle, and that's how I move my house. I don't need to own the vehicle because I'm not moving it um, that often. All right, I think I have answered all of the questions. I hope you all have gotten some good information today. I see I got a thumbs down. I don't know how I got a thumbs down, but okay, I'm gonna take my thumbs down today. Um, anyway, that's all I got for y'all today. I think I've been on here for 2 hours. I have been on here for 2 hours. Okay, I thank y'all. FindTinyHouseParking.com is the site. Um, would love to have you, Gigi. Um, share. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. This is what I do. This is the joy. This is my purpose. This is what I know I'm supposed to be doing. So I thank you all. I thank you all for showing up on Sundays. Please like, share, do all of the things to help me grow my channel, to help me get my information out there. I always say, if you like what you've seen, be sure to share it, and also be sure that you sign up for the notification so that you'll know when it's live. Absolutely. All right. Happy Sunday, everybody. Um, Mary saying, not saying this because of present company is the truth. I've seen the most progress from the Black community in the tiny house movement, far surpassing white men and white women who were the leaders. Mary knows my history and how I've had to battle some of the folks here. But I thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Glad it was helpful. You're very welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Happy Sunday. Enjoy your week. Do something good for yourself. Okay, Day is saying sometimes when somebody's trying to give a thumbs up, they accidentally hit the thumbs down. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I wasn't going to take it personal, but um, but I was wondering, what did I do? Thank y'all. Um, do all the things that work for you to move yourself, to take care of yourself, to advocate for yourself. Nope, you're fine. You are fine, Mary. Um, do do something good for yourself, and keep doing something good for yourself. Take care of yourself. Prioritize yourself. All of those things. That's what I'm working on. And thank y'all. All right. Happy Sunday. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here.